Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. Before we proceed with a few questions, and I'm sure a lot of you have questions today, I just want to have a few words. From the start, we wanted to keep our core veterans. We've made every effort possible. We've gone to the wall and tried and sign them. Today, we need to stay focused on the rebuild. Matt wanted to be part of a contender, and if with us was possibly going to test free agency, as an organization, we had to get good assets for him.
I've been through it before, playing against my old team first game. It's weird to be in the same building. I mean, to drive to the rink, have the same routine, and it's a road game. It's strange for sure. I came here this morning to get on the ice, and Pierre pulled me aside and said it was close, so I went home, and ended up happening. So I'm excited, though. Obviously, I really treasured my time in Ottawa, and it's definitely a bittersweet thing. I was committed from the start of, wanting to be here and be in Ottawa, and obviously, things happen and things change, and you got to make the right decision for your future.
Well, hello all. Happy weekend, happy Saturday, happy trade deadline eve before the eve of trade deadline. It's Agree or Disagree the podcast, hockey edition. Follow me on Twitter at KVOLE, Spreaker.com, KVOLE. Subscribe on iTunes and Spotify, Agree or Disagree the podcast. Facebook, Kevin Olenek, Agree or Disagree the podcast. Lots of stuff going on this not only around the NHL, but really specifically around the Canucks. It's been a quite fascinating morning already, as always. Of course, we'll get into the Matt Duchene trade to the Columbus Blue Jackets. What does that mean? We'll get into that. What's going to happen with Mark Stone? We'll probably have to discuss that. We'll talk about Connor McDavid's suspension from the NHL. With me, as always, hello, Sean.
Hello.
And hello, Tyler.
Hello.
And with lots of Canucks news to get to, including Edler, the possibility of Jonathan Dahlen being on the trade block, which is interesting, and a few other things that is going on. Let's get started. As I pull up my notes, great radio. Always have your notes ready as you're going. It's nice. Let's see here. Sorry about that. Let's kind of get started here. Maybe this is the best way with kind of the start of the week. There was one game. They had a good couple of periods against the Arizona Coyotes, but the third period kind of was bad, and the Coyotes came away with a win that a lot of people felt that the Canucks should have had. Arizona took that in overtime there. So moving into the standings, the Canucks are now 4 points out of the second wild card position with Minnesota. Kind of my quick observation of that game, is it me, before we get into Edler, is it me, or is this a team starting to run out of gas? In the sense of, like, they just don't have, right now with the talent and the players on this lineup, it just doesn't, they just don't have the talent that other teams have at this point that they're able to label onto the ice.
Yeah, I think Travis Green's definitely running the big players out there a lot. You're seeing big minutes from Pettersson, Horvat, and Besser. You're seeing big minutes from Hutton and Stetcher because of Edler and Tanev being out. And you're not... I would say they're definitely running out of gas a little bit here. But that being said, I think there's some major concerns and issues that need to be looked at in terms of the power play that's holding them back from winning these games that they can control for the majority of the time.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. I just to expand on the power play thing. I mean, even 5-on-5, it looks like they're frustrated to find the back of the net, and this is, I guess it really shouldn't be too surprising. You get into this point of the season where it's a crunch. Every point is crucial. You're looking at the scoreboard and seeing the teams around you and the movement and all that. And suddenly now it's harder to put that puck into the net. And this is one of the things that players and the fans and everybody has to get used to in a rebuild is learning how to come through in these crucial situations and find a way to get it done. And we're seeing that be a bit of a struggle for the Canucks, especially when they have some injuries. But they're not out of it, but they are starting to slip, and it's hard to see at this point how they're going to get back into that final wild card spot.
Yeah, it's tough, especially with all the teams around them, and 3-point games don't help. And the stat, I'm trying to find the stat that Jeff Patterson had. He said the only 3 players that have scored a power play goal for the Canucks since 2000, the end of 2018. I'm trying to remember if he said November, December, were Besser, Horvat, and Pettersson. They have not got a power play from anybody that not named Besser, Horvat, and Pettersson, which is quite scary when not only you're in a playoff race, but it's quite scary in terms of even a rebuild, because this is a bit of a talent concern in some ways, I think.
The talent concern and a setup concern, because not only that, the Canucks power play is 0-4 in February. They have not scored a power play goal in the month of February. And I think a lot of that is, when you look at how teams are defending the Canucks on the power play, is as soon as the puck gets up to the top of the umbrella, they open up that shooting lane and take away the passes to Besser and Pettersson. So they're taking away the 2 most dangerous shooters on the power play and leaving that shooting lane open from the top of the blue line there, which is a very low percentage shot unless you've got a lot of traffic in front, and then it's a low percentage to get through. So it's something that I think the Canucks need to look at in terms of changing up the system and going away from the 1-3-1 and maybe going more towards an overload system where what we were used to with the Sedins.
It seems like making that kind of a switch at this point of the season would be a bold strategy. But I don't know how much longer you can go without having any success on the power play before you decide to do that. But we got some power play units reported by Brendan Batchelor here this morning. The first power play unit: Besser, Horvat, Pettersson, Levo, and Hutton. And then Gaudette, Goldobin, Spooner, Granlund, and Stetcher for the second power play unit. So that, it's quite the drop off in the name value there, I guess, if you want to put it that way, from the first unit to the second unit.
Yeah, for sure. And they do have Goldobin with Horvat and Levo on the morning line, with the line rushes Pettersson, Spooner, and Besser, Gaudette, Granlund, McEwen back, Beagle, Eriksson, Amat, Schaller. Roussel is not on the ice, which is, trade deadline eve of the eve. Of course, that'll get everybody's scratching everybody's head, but I'm sure it's fine. Hutton, Stetcher, Sotner, Gerbratson, Pouliot, Biega. Alex Edler was seen on the ice. We'll get to him. Luke Shen and Thatcher Demko took the morning skate as well. So at least some good news. In terms of getting some players back, I don't know if Edler and Shen are going to play tonight. Who knows? Or Demko is going to be on the bench. We don't know that yet. But if we find out, we'll get into that. The big talk going in terms of the Canucks trade deadline and what's going to happen, the big talk has been surrounded around Alex Edler. Here's what Jim Benning had to say earlier this week about where they are at.
With Mark Stowe's agent, and we're going to continue to talk. We're going to talk later today, and so hopefully that's something we can get done.
What's the most difficult thing in that negotiation? Would it be money term, or perhaps more with the expansion draft coming?
Well, I don't want to get into specifics about, I don't talk about player negotiation And that's something that we set out with the agent right from the start. So I'm not going to comment on that. But, Alex is a player that's been here a long time. He's an important player in our group as a mentor to, Petey and some of our young players. And we think, it's important that we try to get it figured out.
So, basically, depending on who you're hearing and what you're hearing or what's true or what's not, the expectation is Alex Edler could sign his contract shortly after the trade deadline. And the big discussion isn't money with this, but it is term. And of course, you heard the question in there about the expansion draft and the idea of what Edler wants in terms of no movement and kind of what would be your ideal scenario to sign Alex Edler? Let's start there. And then I'm going to ask us another question after that. But what's an ideal contract if you were happy that this was the contract and the term? What would it be?
I would be looking for 2 years. You look at the way the Canucks are trending, and the young defenseman that they have coming up on the left side, having him there to help insulate them as they come up is big. But you don't want to have anything too long of a contract, because by the time the 2 years are up, if everything goes well, you should have Hughes ahead of him in the depth chart. You should have Hutton pushing him, if not passing him in the depth chart, and then you've got Hugh Levy coming up as well. Let alone Brisebois and Sautner, who have looked quite capable of playing bottom pair minutes with their recent call-ups.
2-year deal for me is as long as I would be comfortable with. One thing I'm wondering is what kind of no trade protection is going to be included there. I would assume that Edler and his agent would be pushing for that again, which obviously is an issue down the road. But Benning did concede there that they need Edler for mentorship reasons, and I would certainly agree with that. So I don't know, Sean, did you throw out a cap hit there as far as what?
No, I don't really have a major issue with as long as with the cap hit, because to get the 2 years, I think they may have to overpay, because I think you're looking at, if you're looking at it from Alex Edler's perspective, he's probably wanting 3 years or more. So if you're going to force the issue and compromise on a 2-year deal, you may have to overpay him and push up over more than you would expect, which I think might be. I'd be fine overpaying for at least 2 years at $8 million or more, just to get that 2-year contract. If you have to go to 3 years, you say we'll give you no trade for the first 2 years, but that third year there can't be any.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking $8 million for a cap hit is probably realistic, I think, for the two sides to settle on.
Yeah, my thought would be is if you can get him to do this is a bit of a compromise, but maybe there's two ways I'm thinking. If you could get him to start signing a 1-year deal, and we'll see where to go after that, that might be interesting. Or if you do 2 years, at least the first year, okay, we can go no move or modify no move, but the second year we need to move you just for expansion and stuff. I think that would be interesting. I do agree the $8 million seems fine there, considering what they have. I think that seems reasonable. I don't know, but that's the challenge with Edler. I think that's the challenge with Edler is he sees a longer term career that he thinks he can. This is what I'm feeling is the tension. The fan base or the media base doesn't believe that Alex Edler can play after 35 years old because science indicates that it's tough to play after 35 years old. But Alex Edler, in his mind, heart, and soul, believes that he will be able to contribute after the age of 35. And he wants to do it here in Vancouver. I don't really think he wants to move. Like, he's gone to the Sedin school of, I want to play my entire career here.
Yeah.
So, but let's flip this and let's say that Alex Edler, in the middle of the night, had just epiphany and said, we're not going to win a Stanley Cup. I have an opportunity to win a Stanley Cup with a couple of other teams out there. What is a reasonable acquisition? What reasonably can the Canucks get for Alex Edler?
If you look at what Nick Jensen got with Washington acquiring him, I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could get a first-round pick and possibly a B-level prospect for him.
I would be surprised if a team was willing to give up a first rounder, but I guess if it was a lower first rounder, maybe. But I think a second rounder and some kind of decent prospect probably.
Is that in your mind enough to move the Canucks forward? So I guess the question comes down to this. Is it better at this point on Monday, February 25th, is it better to have Alex Edler in the lineup or better to have traded Alex Edler?
That's a tough question because if you look at it depends on your how you see the Canucks defense developing. If Quinn Hughes was here already, I think that changes things, and what, because you kind of have an idea of what you have with him, because he's still a bit of a mystery, even though he's got all the potential in the world to be a top pair defenseman who can change the game with the puck on his stick. And you also have to look at how are you bringing along these young defensemen. So, in my opinion, I think they're better off keeping him and having him help mentor these players, help insulate them, and not have to throw them to the wolves. Because the other question is, do you really think that that Ben Hutton can play 22, 23, 24 minutes a game for a full season? Because if you get rid of Edler, that's what you're going to have to rely on Hutton to play.
And
yeah, Kevin, I mean, the easy answer is to say it depends, right, on whatever trade return there is. But no, they need Edler. They need the ability to log all those minutes, like Sean's talking about, and they need his leadership. They need his just his savvy. You're going to bring in a Quinn Hughes, and there's a guy that's going to need some mentoring as well. So. And then for me, like Olli Juolevi, like I still believe in him, from a fan point of view, but it's getting to be a bit of a concern whether this guy is going to work out or not. So if you then lose an Alex Edler, I mean then what do you got for defense? Like it's starting to look a lot thinner. So I don't know. They're better off, in my opinion, with Edler in the lineup on Monday or after Monday.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at this defense. I mean, Hutton and Stetcher are playing close to 30 minutes. I don't know if they're quite there yet, but I mean, we'll see as this goes on. That's because it's quite likely they're going to become the number one pair, if not by the end of the season, at least probably by when we're starting 19-20. But the rest after this, right now, Brisebois has shown signs. Sautner is going to show some signs, but other than that, it's quite frankly quite scary what's behind there. That it's playoff race or not. It's the big concern right now, and one of the reasons that you see the Canucks running out of gas is they just don't have NHL talent out there. And as we've talked about on this podcast before, the more you play Eric Gudbranson, the worse and more scary that it is, because it's just. God love Eric Gudbranson as a fine human being, but he's not a current NHL defenseman anymore.
Yeah, and that's the other side of the coin is the right side is not is even worse off than well, I say the left side's in decent shape, the right side not so much, because outside of Stetcher there's not much that you can really build off of going forward, because Tanev is in the same situation as Edler, not as old, but he's definitely struggled to stay healthy this year, and for the past few years. So it's what can you realistically expect from him going forwards? Good Branson's just continues to be a liability out there. He his ice time continues to dwindle even with Tanev out. So I'm not sure what they have on the right side going forwards. So it's one of those. If you can find a way to move Edler for a younger right shot defenseman, then that I think that's something you look at. But I don't think that's realistically out there at this point.
And I understand, like, just from Benning's perspective, sort of not giving up draft picks. But to me, I don't know what you think, but the trade today that the Stars acquired a guy like Ben Lovejoy, that's a guy right now that I can see could have been a valuable asset in for the Canucks. Not, you wouldn't have to give up a lot, but a guy that can play some minutes on the right side. So I guess my question is do you see the Canucks trying to pick up a low, like Doug McLean talked about this during the Flames Ducks game in the second intermission, talking about some of those right shot defensemen low value defensemen that the Flames could be interested in. And it was like Gudis and the Lovejoys and the guys like that. Do you see the Canucks getting into that a little bit, or do you see them stepping away? Well, I mean, they're trying to make hockey deals, but do you think that that's a value for the Canucks going forward here?
I think they need to see what they have with Luke Shen more than going out and making a trade. I think they have someone there that could potentially be a cheaper version for what Eric Branson brings, and then maybe you can find a way to move Branson, because I think there's still going to be some older school GMs out there that will want a big physical defenseman like Eric Branson to add to their blue line.
Yeah, I think there's a market for Branson too, but you talk about general managers being interested in an old school big body defenseman. Well, I think the Canucks general manager is one of those people. So I don't see a Branson move happening anytime soon, unless it's a knock your socks off type of offer. But that's not really that realistic.
Yeah, it's interesting going forward, looking at this defense core, what they do, because I think because there'll have to be some work in the off season. At like the left side, you're right, is fine, but the right side, it's a bit of a mystery. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do, and they probably have, like, realistically, playoffs were not in there, so maybe you can look at this next year and make a really legitimate push for a Dougie Hamilton in the offseason, or maybe make a fire shot at Derek Carlson. But I think in the offseason, this is going to have to, the defense of the Canucks is going to have to be a priority, I think.
Yeah.
So there's another interesting thing that happened in Canucks land. And we kind of talked a little bit about this last week with Tyler Shipley from Canucks Army. And this was talked about a little bit even with JD Burke. Talked about what is going on in Utica. The name Jonathan Dahlen has appeared to have come up in trade talk. Whether you believe that or not is completely up to you, but he has not played on the Canucks this year. He has played 50 games with the Utica Comets, fourth, I believe, in scoring as I pull up the notes here, and over a -10. There was a lot of high expectations about this guy coming into the season. There was a hope in the future that he would be the guy that would be playing with Pettersson. What's going on here?
I think they're just kicking the tires and seeing if there's a move that they can make to get someone that maybe plays at a higher tempo than Jonathan Dahlen does, because I think one of the knocks on him is that he's not exactly the fastest skater, and with the way Green wants to play, you kind of need to be a good skater to succeed in Green's system. And I think all the hand wringing and all that from the fan base about Dahlen being on the block, I think is just shows a little bit to where the team is and the organization is in terms of the fans' mind and the rebuild, because you're looking at Jonathan Dahlen was one of the first more exciting players that the Canucks picked up in once they decided to rebuild, acquiring him for Alex Burrows, and him putting up all the points he did out in Sweden. He gave the fan base hope, and I think and then you throw in his friendship and his chemistry that he has with Elias Pettersson. I think it's tough to really let go of that for a lot of fans. But if the right deal comes along, I think he could be a very good trade chip for the Canucks to maybe acquire someone who fits what they're looking for going forward a bit better.
A general manager wouldn't be doing his job if he didn't at least see what the possibilities are for a return on a prospect, an asset like Jonathan Dahlen. Would fan angst over this possibility be because he was the guy that came back in the Burrows trade and everybody loves Burrows? Like, if it's about that, to me, that's just silly. Like, you gotta, if there's a hockey deal to be made that's gonna make the team deeper and better long term, then it's got to be on the table. It's pretty simple for me. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, at this time of the year, there's all kinds of rumor and speculation.
Yeah, a lot of it is. I mean, yeah, there's a lot out there that's just it's smoke, but not necessarily fire. There's smoke and fire, and then there's smoke. But pulling the numbers up here specifically for Dahlen, 14 goals, 15 assists, 29 points, which is actually fifth on the team. A guy like Zach McEwen, 17 goals, 25 assists, 42 points. To compare, McEwen -6, Dahlen -13. You can take plus minus for what you want, but I mean, maybe there was a little bit. We were maybe overexcited about Dahlen, and he's just maybe not quite getting that year, and maybe he may not be quite in the fit of where Travis Green is. But do you see what would be a reasonable acquisition for a Jonathan Dahlen?
I think you're looking at probably just another player similar to him in the development. Someone who's close to making the NHL, just a different sort of style of player, maybe.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I don't know. I don't know how they could make a deal here that would get them multiple pieces in return. I don't really see it. We'll see how that would go. But
yeah, like a throw. He feels a bit more. Sorry to say this in some ways, but he feels a bit more that he could potentially be a throw-in prospect than probably a key piece.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily the best time to trade him in terms of what they're looking for as well. He seems like more of a draft day, around the draft type player that you would shop to get the quote unquote hockey deal that Benning's looking for. If the Canucks were into the competing side of building up to everything, then you look at getting more of a NHL ready player, and someone who can step into the roster right away. But that's not what they're looking for right now.
Yeah, they're looking for more kind of other stuff, not necessarily.
They're looking for someone who they can build and grow with the current group core.
Yeah. certainly it was interesting that his name has come up because we haven't really heard his name much this year. So maybe it kind of was a surprise, but it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. I don't expect him to be a guy that is gone on Monday, but we'll see about that, I guess, going forward. Do you see the Canucks being busy Monday or not?
I don't see them being busy at all. I think maybe if they can find a hockey deal out there, they'll make a trade. But they've made the deals trading Gagne and Del Zotto. But they don't. The only other sort of big name potential UFA like rental out that they have is Edler, and they're looking to re-sign him. So unless they're looking to try to maybe move an RFA for something, I just don't see it.
Nothing more than tweaks, lesser known names in the system, or maybe swapping picks or whatever. If there's an opportunity to add a pick in the 2019 draft in any round, I'm sure that Benning would like to do that. But that's about it. I don't see anything big with any huge names involved.
No, yeah. No, I agree with you. I think I would suspect in Vancouver will be quiet. Where it will not be quiet, and it's not been quiet all year, has been Ottawa. As Matt Duchene was he was scratched earlier. He was expected to be scratched to not play until the trade was happened. And it finally did happen. Did he end up in Nashville? No. Did he end up in Winnipeg? No. He ended up in Columbus. Now paired with Anteri Panarin, which has been one of the key trade deadline stars that was expected to either be moved or be focused on Monday. So I guess let's look at this before we get to the mess that is the Ottawa Senators, because we haven't really talked about this. From the Columbus Blue Jacket perspective, is this a good acquisition? Are you intrigued by the Columbus Blue Jackets now, or?
I am. This was one an interesting decision that they had to make, with Panarin and Bobrovsky both being UFAs coming summer, and Panarin saying he is basically going to test the market, so that he's likely gone. So they had to make a decision on to either pull back and do some asset management and see what they can get for the one or both of those, or just go all in and see what they can do with the team that they have. And that they decided to go all in and acquired Matt Duchene. And it sounds like they're not done either. I've seen that they've are in the Ryan Dzingel sweepstakes as well. And I like it, because you're at some point you have to bite the bullet and say, this is our year, and go for it. And I don't, if they had decided to go the asset management route, when would that year be? So I like it as a gutsy move to say, this is our year, we're going for it, and let's see what we can do. The other thing is that if with Panarin looking to test the market, and I would say he's most likely leaving, I think they have a decent shot at if they can have a decent run, keeping Matt Duchene in there, and then they're not as worse off going into next year.
For Columbus, given the pending free agents they have, it's I would call this a bold move. There's so many other teams in the Eastern Conference that get all the attention around being a contender. The general manager came out yesterday and made it very clear they're going for it. They want to show their fans they're serious. Now, why is that? Well, they've been around for almost 20 years and never won a playoff series, so they feel like they're close enough now that like we say here, like at what point do you are you ever going to make the move? Like, you got to make the move at some point, right? So it's so they're going all in. It's risky, but clearly that's how the ownership there feels. They want to do that.
Yeah, it's you know what's really interesting? This may not be as hot of a take as I think, but you look at the standings in the East and the West, and who's sitting in the top positions. This may be a year for your NHL playoff bracket that there is potential for a ton of upsets. Depending on your perspective of Calgary, they could be a first round exit. The Winnipeg Jets are, like, I'm just starting in the West, but the Winnipeg Jets are not playing very good hockey right now. Like, yeah, they won last night against the Vegas Golden Knights, but they looked terrible against the Colorado Avalanche. They could be a team that could be beaten. Nashville could be a team that's beaten. Tampa Bay is a team, I mean, yeah, they're doing great. They haven't lost in 10, but they haven't won a cup in a long time. They haven't had a lot of super success. The Pittsburgh Penguins are the Pittsburgh Penguins are in the last wild card spot as I'm looking at the standings now. So if there was an opportunity to make this move, if you're Columbus, this might be the year. And you're not going to, you guys know this better than anybody else. There is no way in hell that you're going to rebuild a team with John Tortorella. It's just not going to happen. So if you're going out, this is probably the best way to go out. Put it all in now. Your chips are mostly in, and see what happens, and see how far that you can get. The Islanders can be a team that I think can be out in the first round too. I'm not entirely convinced that they're as good as they are right at this point in time. We'll have to see. So this is probably one of the best times to make this kind of. It's pretty bold, but I think they have a shot at doing something.
They've got the defense with Werenski, Seth Jones, and Ryan Murray leading the charge there. They've got, and with playoffs, if you get a hot goalie, you can go really deep. And there's not many goalies better when they're on than Sergei Bobrovsky. So yeah, like I said, it is bold. I like it just for that very reason. You get a hot goalie, and with the firepower they have up front, they're going to be a tough out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's I guess the feeling of ownership and management there is asking the fans to be patient while they take a step back is just not on right now. It's they've made the playoffs the last couple of years. They feel like they probably have a pretty high level of consistency right now. They don't want to give up on that right now. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe they are looking at some of those other teams around them. You didn't mention Toronto as a team that could possibly flame out in the first round. I think they could.
I don't think that they're a favorite in their matchup right now, though. I don't think that they can beat Boston.
Yeah. So, maybe the Blue Jackets are looking at it like it's pretty wide open outside of having to face Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and remember last year, Columbus had a 2-0 series lead on Washington before Washington came back and eventually won the cup. So that's quite fascinating. Some interesting news. I just noticed from Jeff Patterson 5 minutes ago on Roussel. By the way, Green said he wasn't feeling well. We'll see how he is tonight. So game time sounds like Roussel will be a game time decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see if he's out there for warm up.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm glad Green has. Isn't giving us the graphic description like Torts.
Oh. Yes, thank you, Travis. Thank you very much for just yeah.
Well, when Torts doesn't want to answer uncomfortable questions, he has a way of shutting it down, and that was a different way.
Yeah, yeah. Back to the Duchene trade. Let's look at this from the Ottawa Senators' perspective. We have most of the season mocked the Edmonton Oilers for or criticized or mocked or laughed at.
We've been pretty good the last couple weeks.
Yes, we've left them alone. We're going to get into them in a little bit. But the Ottawa, if you're an Ottawa Senator fan, and it's not like this team, the difference between the Senators and the Oilers is quite fascinating because the Senators actually have drafted really well. They have had some really good prospects. They've done some really good things. They just either A, can't keep a player, or B, their owner just cannot stay out of the spotlight, or they just find some way to shoot down a PR right now. What are you thinking, first of all, from a Senator fan point of view? If you're a Senator fan, what's your mindset this morning?
I think I think hasn't really changed. I think the they've resigned to the fact that they were going to lose these three players. At least I think Duchene was the most likely to leave, and then I think they were resigned to the fact that they were going to have to suffer through an even worse rebuild now. And I think the only issue is that the first round pick in this year is lottery protected. I wonder how Pierre Dorion felt giving up that condition after not lottery protecting his the first round pick to acquire Matt Duchene.
Yeah, he's learned a lesson there.
Mm-hmm.
I just it's got to be depressing to be an Ottawa Senators fan just because of how quickly it's unraveled. I mean, it was only a couple of playoffs ago now that they were in the third round, a goal away from reaching the Stanley Cup final. It looked like it had a dynamite team, and it's just completely unraveled. And I mean, you played the clip at the beginning there, Kevin, and you're listening to Pierre Dorion talk. He's reading off a prepared script. You hear the lip smacks. You see the body language. It just doesn't give the fans much confidence in what they're doing there.
Yeah,
I mean, and it's toxic with the owner. So I don't know where they go from here. I mean, they only they got to be patient. We've talked about this with Edmonton too, where it's just like it's got to be depressing and frustrating. But the only way forward is to be patient. I don't know. The big thing that sticks out for me with Ottawa is it seems like they're cheap.
yeah,
Like it just like if like the namers end up leaving and they don't feel like they were being offered very much.
yeah. Like it sounds like they're trying to keep there's no reason right now for a player to stay in Ottawa. Like if you're a veteran, like there doesn't feel like there's an atmosphere right now where this team can grow and thrive. It seems to me, even go back to the Carlson Hoffman controversy, whatever that was. That was that became kind of a there's something more in that culture. Like, speaking of something in the water, there's something in the water in Ottawa as well. I don't know what that is, but it feels like to me like there's just it's a bit of a mess there.
I don't know. I mean, I'd go back as far as Daniel Alfredson. He played one final year with the Red Wings because basically Ottawa didn't want to pay too much to keep him, and I mean, at the time, Alfredson was the franchise, led them to a Stanley Cup final.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and he felt like he, was it was a big diss that they were going to offer him something cheap.
Yeah, they lowballed him.
Really lowballed him.
Yeah, and that's why he ended up in Detroit, and he's not really back with the organization anymore. That's really sad. Like, he's a guy of high status and stuff. So
yeah, I mean, they made peace, and honored him and stuff, but it's, I don't know. That's not encouraging to see that, and then since then we've seen other high profile guys when they're in their free agent year say I'm testing the market.
Yeah,
they don't really believe in what the Senators are doing, and they're clearly not being offered a big money or big term to stay.
Yeah. So from a perspective here, okay, which leads us to the Mark Stone conversation more than anything. Anything else. I mean, and the Zingle, I guess, but from a Mark Stone perspective, if you're a Sens fan, what is a reasonable load to get back for Mark Stone? What are you hoping here?
Something similar to what they got for Duchene, maybe a little, likely a little bit more, but something similar with that framework where you're going to get a first, a couple prospects, and then maybe a conditional first with for his if he decides to resign with the team.
Yeah, I would say minimum 3 pieces, absolutely including a first-round pick is a must.
Yeah. So you got to have, especially when you're about to lose either a Jack Hughes or someone of a high status, you got to get another first-round pick. Where do you see Mark Stone ending up?
I think he'll end up in Winnipeg. I think with the way Winnipeg's playing right now, I think they're going to um, make a bold move and grab him and hope that shakes things up and they can go deep with him. He's a local guy as well.
Kevin, you use the phrases where there's smoke, there's fire, and sometimes there's smoke and smoke and fire. Well, I think it's the smoke and fire both are present when it comes to the Jets and Senators in terms of the amount of representation they've had at each other's games lately.
Yeah.
So there's definitely something happening there. It's just a matter of can they get it done before 3 p.m. Eastern time on Monday.
Well, it's fascinating to me because I was just listening to the Flames post game. There was a big conversation about like, what if you're the Flames? What do you give up for Mark Stone? Because the Flames are in the Mark Stone conversation. I don't think that they're going to end up with Mark Stone. I agree with you. He ends up in Winnipeg, but it's so like what you give up for this guy because I guess if you're Winnipeg, you probably feel like you have at least a 65% chance of bringing this guy back. But if you're another team, like if you're a Boston or a Pittsburgh or a Calgary or a Nashville, it's tougher to make that trade in some senses because you're going to have to give up a lot of, you're going to have to give up an A-level prospect for a guy that you're going to have a 2-month run. And it's like, depending on your cupboard, it's in some ways for most teams, it's a really tough deal to make. Mm-hmm. Like, it's almost like, to me, I guess from a Calgary Flame perspective, or even if I was in Nashville, I'd almost say, okay, Winnipeg, you take Mark Stone, and I'm going to take my chance as a free agency that I can offer him a better deal. Because if I can keep my prospects and build with Mark Stone next year, okay, I didn't win the Cup this year, but I could win the Cup next year and still have my window open. Where Winnipeg could be in a position where if they do this wrong, that window could close. And that window is a tougher window in their division because somehow the St. Louis Blues and the Chicago Blackhawks exist again.
Yeah, the Central is again the toughest division.
Yeah, I think of all the teams we've mentioned here in regards to Stone, Winnipeg needs, I think right now at this moment with the way they're struggling, they need to make this deal more than anybody.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. They have to do something. When I watched that Colorado game, I'm like, they got to get Stoner. They're not going anywhere.
And I'm not up on their prospect depth and what they've got for draft picks, but they have not typically been very aggressive with wheeling and dealing. So there may be an appetite now to do it, seeing that window to contend is open.
Yeah,
and it won't be open for very long.
No. And they have, this is going to sound ridiculous when I say it, but going forward, they have a bit of a interesting dilemma on their hand. Because what do you really do with Patrick Laine? Do you give him that big Brock Besser contract? When Sean pointed the numbers out to us on Twitter, his numbers are not comparable to Besser in any way, shape, or Besser's been a better player than Patrick Laine to start his career. So and he hasn't played great the last few months. He had a big November, but he hasn't played great since. And he's up here for a contract. It's really fascinating what you do with Patrick Laine. I'm not saying that you trade him, because that seems in some ways ridiculous. And he's a top talent, no question. But what do you offer this guy?
Yeah, it's an interesting spot that they're in because of his just long slump of not scoring, and he's one of those guys that if he's not scoring, he's not helping. That's just the way he is. So he's what I still think he's like top 2, top 3, like pure sniper in the league. But outside of that, he's not necessarily going to add much to your roster if he's not producing the goals. Well, Besser can pass a lot better than Line. He's better defensively than Line. So yeah, it's gonna be very interesting.
Yeah, and if you look at the Canucks and you see Besser and say, oh, well, how big is he a piece on this team with all the other forwards around him? You say really big piece. With Winnipeg, yeah, he's a big piece, but they got more there. So, and if he's one dimensional and it's all about scoring, all they have to do is just look at the statistics and say, well, it's not at the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, it's not, for him, it's not going very well in terms of what kind of value he's going to, have it, come the off season.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. Before we get to the next topic, Patterson says Edler still on IR, will not play tonight. Was off limits from media, so not able to discuss trade deadline contract. It sounds like he will practice with the team tomorrow. So that's interesting as well. The other big news, Oilers Twitter blew up again because Connor McDavid got suspended, and he had a few things to say about this today. Let's listen. I found it. Oh, there's probably going to be some advertising here. Let's just basically, he questioned. The Oilers organization's pretty upset. Bob Nicholson sent out a statement feeling they were really disappointed. Keith Gretzky sent out a statement that they're really disappointed. The Oiler media, Bob Stauffer, is claiming that of course, let's read Bob Stauffer's tweet because it's quite something, and he's like love him or hate him, he absolutely he bleeds the whatever color that the Oiler is right now, orange, blue, whatever. But basically, he said that the NHL is not taking care of its stars. So from your guys' perspective, this 2-game suspension, too much, bull crap. What were your thoughts?
I think it's a good suspension, especially because it is McDavid. You want these blindside head clipping of the head hits to go away, because those are the ones that have potential to cause major concussion issues. Just ask Sven Berchi, who has been nailed by a couple of those, and unfortunately the NHL didn't do anything about them. I wasn't expecting 2 games. I was expecting 1, but 2 is good because he is the star of the league, and if you can't, and you have to hold those players to the same standard as the third and fourth liners who are usually making those hits. So it's a good benchmark, and hopefully they can keep up with it.
I think 2 was a surprise for everybody just because who he is. It's hard to know what the NHL's thinking is, but I have a couple of theories on that. One, they maybe look at it like it's an easy opportunity to make an example out of somebody who has high profile to get people's attention. The other one is on the ice at the time, he received a 2-minute penalty and ended up staying in the game and scoring the winning goal in overtime. So maybe the league is looking at it like they had to throw an extra game in there because of the fact that he still was able to affect the outcome of the game where the infraction occurred. I don't know. They don't give you that transparency. They don't explain any of that. But those are a couple of things that I think the league considered. Bob Stauffer, he's talking about how it's a superstar. It doesn't get protected by the refs, gets no benefit of the doubt on a first-time infraction. Well, I mean, other stars have been suspended too. I mean, Ovechkin's had suspensions. Other star players have been suspended, and Malkin just got the 1 game for the stick swinging incident there against I guess it was against Philly.
Yeah.
And I mean, he grazed the guy, but they don't take kindly to stick swinging. Given you go back to McSorley and Brashear,
Yes.
Those things grab the league's attention, and I mean, hits to the head or that's top of the list for things that everybody wants taken out of the game. So it's the league was in a tough spot here. If they did nothing, I mean that's just not defensible.
And Nick Leddy was in concussion protocol during the game, and I don't believe he returned. He didn't return. Here's what Brendan Burke, the play-by-play voice for the New York Islanders, said. Bob Stauffer, basically what Bob Stauffer said was pretty ironic that a superstar player who doesn't get protected by the officials gets no benefit of the doubt on a first-time infraction. There's a reason why the NBA kicks the NHL's ass in the U.S. The NBA respects their stars, the NHL doesn't. Brendan Burke responds, if we can spend 7 minutes reviewing if a player's skates was 1/8 of an inch off the ice, why aren't headshots reviewable, i.e. targeted in college football? Not seeing it is not a good enough excuse when it comes to brain injuries. He goes on to say, just a thought, if a player receives a check to the head penalty and the penalty he hit has to go through concussion protocol, it's an automatic 10-minute misconduct. So we're seeing two different, very different perspectives on this. And I would imagine if the shoe was on the other foot and it was Matthew Barzal on Darnell Nurse, there probably would be a different conversation the other way, but it's just really fascinating. And McDavid's perspective on this, I found it here, so I'll see if I can play this here. Hang on one moment.
That's obviously a little bit more private. I thought I raised some good points about the play. But I think a lot of times they go in and they already have their mind made up. They don't really care what you have to say. So, ultimately, the hearing went as good as you would expect, and
Yeah, so basically, McDavid is giving a shot to the NHL. Fair, not fair? What do you think of that?
I think it's with these headshots, it doesn't really matter what the player has to say. If they've made contact with the head, the way that McDavid did, I think that's a suspendable play, and you can't. And it doesn't matter what they say about how they went about making that hit; it's still an illegal hit to the head. And I can understand where he's coming from, but I think the league needs to take a stand on this because of how prevalent and the concussions are in the public's mind, and how they can absolutely destroy a player's after hockey career.
I don't think McDavid's wrong when he says that with this process, often it's already determined and the hearing is just an opportunity for the player to have a say and to give the appearance of due process. I know I'm kind of paraphrasing him there a little bit, but essentially I think that's what he's saying, and that he only sees the hearing part of it as just part of the process, doesn't really change the actual decision. The thing is, though, you're wading into questioning the integrity of what the league's doing. It's just never a good look, in my opinion, to do that in public. And again, I don't think he's wrong to feel that way, but I can have repercussions down the road, especially if he gets into trouble again with something that's iffy. So I wish he didn't say that, but I don't think he's wrong either.
Are the Oilers getting a different reputation about complaining about officiating?
I think they are.
Yeah, you'd have to think so.
Yeah, because you go back to Hitchcock going about with teams like the hooking and grabbing on McDavid and the complaining about that, and then now you go to this. I think it comes across as I think it's tough to overlook that, and I think the reputation is warranted.
Oh, and now you have Bob Nicholson, the CEO, a high-level executive in the organization, coming out in public and complaining as well. So, I mean, it's where do they go next? What happens next if some other suspension happens? I don't know. There's not going to be much sympathy left from around the league.
They're losing sympathy quite quickly anyway, I think. And if they win the lottery again, I think people are just going to throw up
Don't even suggest that.
Yeah, okay. Touch wood, that doesn't happen. I'm doing that even as an Oiler fan. Okay, Oiler fans, I'm doing this for you because you don't need that. You don't need to win another lottery. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want that.
No.
No, it's rebuild 3.0.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, you bring back Taylor. Now they bring back Taylor Hall.
It's I think fans are fed up and they want to see the success, but I think there's just a lot of frustration starting from the fan base going all the way up to the management in terms of how this season has gone.
Yeah.
I just want to add one more thing on this. I mean, McDavid missed a game a couple games ago because he wasn't feeling very well. They lost in the shootout to Arizona that night, but it was nice to see a few other guys step up and take on a bigger role. And Nugent Hopkins got a clutch goal to tie it and force overtime. It was, I think in a way it's good for them to have to play without McDavid for a few games and get the rest of the team to pick their socks up and not, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, playing like he's going to carry them. Well, I mean that's not working. It shouldn't be like that. And if he's not in the lineup, then it does force everybody to pick it up a notch. And I don't think that's a bad thing for the Oilers.
No, I don't. I don't. I agree with you. Actually, I think, this team, especially at this time of year and going into next season, they do need to see, other than what they have in McDavid, Draisaitl, and Nugent Hopkins, what do they have? Mm-hmm. Because next year is going to be a pretty whatever happens next year, it's going to be pretty important. I don't know what the Oilers' plan is going forward. I have no idea, but for McDavid's sake, because the whispers and the questions are starting to get out there. Will Connor McDavid ask for a trade? It's becoming a bit of a conversation out there, ridiculous or not. This team has to turn it around almost quicker than they may be in the ability to. But it's really going to be, they need to see what they have.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is too is they've been working him so hard this season that now he's going to get a couple of games off to recharge the batteries, so to speak. That wouldn't be a bad thing for him either. I'm not suggesting that he looks like he's out of gas when he's playing, but yeah, there's a lot of miles on those legs this season. The way they run him out there, playing minutes like a defenseman.
Yeah, he's played a lot, and so
for that final push, if they still think that they can get to the playoffs, I mean, I don't think they can, but for that final push, maybe you'll have a little extra jump.
Yeah, we will certainly see. Is there anything else we need to touch on that we missed?
I think we covered all the major points.
Good. I just, sometimes something happens as we're, we have been pretty up to date as we've gone on here. So I think we've done well. So again, how do we follow everyone?
Beardy Canuck 03 on Twitter.
And I'm at Tnoble, Tnoble, and should just mention Canucks Hockey Night in Canada hosting the Islanders tonight. Another big one. Boy, the Canucks need they need wins. They need them badly. It's another big one for them on a Saturday night.
Yes, and next week, of course, a very interesting night as Jarome Iginla's jersey will be retired in Calgary. I'm going to be intrigued what they're going to do with the Sedins, because that's been an awfully quiet thing.
That's going to happen next year with their the anniversary,
right?
Of the organization.
That's a good point. Yeah, a good point. All right, but that'll be it.
Just one quick update here. Rick Dollyball talks are at a standstill between Canucks and Edler, but they can talk after trade deadline as well. So and he doesn't see Edler being traded by Monday.
Okay, there we go. So don't expect Edler to be traded on Monday. Expect other people to be traded by Monday, but not Alex Edler.
Yeah.
All right, and maybe not a lot of action for the Canucks. But we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.